The rhythmic tick-tock of a tourbillon escapement was the metronome of my life. For years, it was a sound of creation, of partnership, of shared dreams. My workshop, filled with the scent of lubricating oils, polished brass, and old wood, was a sanctuary. I was Elias Vance, the artisan, the heart of Aethelred Horology. My hands, calloused and steady, brought intricate timepieces to life. My partner, Julian Croft, was the face, the silver-tongued salesman who could sell a sundial in a thunderstorm. Together, we were unstoppable. Our brand was built on my family's legacy. The Aethelred Escapement, a unique and fiendishly complex mechanism my grandfather designed, was our signature. It was more accurate, more resilient, and aesthetically captivating. I was the only person alive who knew how to build it from scratch. Julian, with his sharp suits and blinding smile, took my creations and spun them into legends for the wrists of collectors, tycoons, and connoisseurs. We started with nothing but a loan against my family home and Julian's supposed seed money. I toiled at the bench for 18 hours a day, perfecting each gear and jewel. Julian networked, schmoozed, and built the brand's mystique. Profits, when they started trickling in, were supposed to be split 50-50. A partnership of equals, Eli, Julian would say, clapping me on the shoulder. The hands and the voice, in perfect harmony. I was too immersed in my craft to notice the subtle changes. The harmony was becoming discordant. Julian's suits became more expensive, his car sleeker, his talk less about our shared vision and more about market positioning and quarterly growth. He handled all the finances, waving away my inquiries with jargon-laden reassurances. Don't you worry your brilliant head about amortization and capital gains, Eli. You just keep making magic. I'll handle the boring stuff. Trust is a fragile mechanism. It can withstand pressure, but betrayal shatters it into 1,000 irreparable pieces. The first sign of the fracture came when a supplier of rare rose gold called me directly, mentioning a series of late payments. I was confused. We had just closed a multi-million-dollar deal with a Qatari client. Our accounts should have been overflowing. When I confronted Julian, his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. A simple clerical error, Eli, already handled, but the seed of doubt had been planted. I tried to log into our corporate bank account, a task I hadn't attempted in years. Access denied. I asked Julian for the latest statements. He prevaricated, claiming his accountant was finalizing the quarterly reports. The excuses became a wall I couldn't seem to penetrate. The day the wall came crashing down was cold and gray, a stark contrast to the gleaming opulence of Julian's new corner office overlooking the city. I had finally insisted, demanded, to see the books. He leaned back in his leather throne, a picture of smug indifference, and slid a single, thick document across the polished mahogany desk. It was our original partnership agreement. Read Clause 17, Subsection B. Eli, he said, his voice as cold as a winter morning. My hands trembled as I read the convoluted legalese. Julian, it turned out, hadn't just contributed charm to our startup. His seed money was channeled through a holding company, Croft Enterprises. The clause I'd skimmed over all those years ago, which I thought established our 50-50 split, was a masterpiece of deception. It stipulated that all profits would first be routed to the primary investor, Croft Enterprises, to service a management and investment fee, amounting to 98% of net profits. The remaining 2% was to be split equally between us. My 50% was, in reality, 1% of the total profit. The business is the partnership, Julian sneered, enjoying my dawning horror. But the money? The money belongs to the investor. That's me. You built the watches, Elias. I built the empire. He had bled the company dry, siphoning the vast profits into his personal accounts, leaving just enough in the operating budget to keep the lights on and buy my materials. I had been working for wages, a glorified employee in my own company, while he had become obscenely wealthy off my family's legacy. He wasn't finished. As the majority stakeholder, he continued, gesturing around the office that my work had paid for, I've decided we need to streamline operations. Your role has become redundant. Security will see you out. Your personal tools will be sent to your home. I was thrown out of the building I helped build, my name stripped from the brand I had given life. I was left with a modest savings account, a box of specialized tools, and a soul-crushing sense of violation. The tick-tock in my head was no longer a rhythm of creation. It was the countdown of a bomb that had already detonated. The next year was a descent into hell. I watched from the sidelines as Julian, now the sole public face of Aethelred Horology, graced the covers of business magazines. He was lauded as a visionary, a solo genius. He even had the gall to give interviews where he spoke of his late partner's foundational contributions as if I were dead. In a way, I was. The creative fire in me had been reduced to embers. I took on menial watch repair jobs at a small, dingy shop in a forgotten part of town just to pay the bills. The irony a constant, bitter taste in my mouth. Every headline celebrating Julian was a new twist of the knife. He was living my dream, a lavish, stolen life funded by my sweat and my grandfather's genius. The rage and despair festered, coiling in my gut. Revenge was a concept I'd only ever read about in books, a dark, consuming thing. But as the months bled into one another, it became the only thing that could reignite my spirit. The spark came from an unexpected place. While clearing out my late father's attic, I stumbled upon a dusty leather portfolio. It wasn't his will or old photos. It contained something far more powerful. Inside were the original notarized patent and trademark documents, filed 30 years ago, not for Aethelred Horology, the company, but for the Aethelred Escapement, the mechanical invention itself. My grandfather, a cautious and brilliant man, had patented his design long before I was born, and in my father's will, a document I had filed away without much thought, he had bequeathed all of his intellectual property and patents directly and personally to me, Elias Vance. Julian had stolen the house, but I owned the land it was built on. Aethelred Horology, the brand, the company, it was all worthless without the legal right to manufacture its core component. The license to use my family's invention was implicit in my presence, my work. Now that I was gone, Julian wasn't just a fraud, he was a patent infringer on a colossal scale. My mind, accustomed to deconstructing complex mechanical systems, began to construct a new one, a mechanism of retribution. This wouldn't be a messy, protracted lawsuit. That was Julian's world of billable hours and legal maneuvering. My revenge would be precise, elegant, and public. A perfectly timed masterpiece of destruction. I sold my father's vintage car, a painful sacrifice, but a necessary one. With the funds, I hired the most ruthless intellectual property lawyer in the country, a shark named Ms. Albright. When I laid the documents on her desk, her eyes, usually cold and analytical, lit up with predatory glee. "Mr. Vance," she said, a slow smile spreading across her face. "This isn't a lawsuit. This is a public execution. He's built a castle on your land. We're not just going to evict him, we're going to pull the cornerstone and watch it all turn to dust." Our plan was meticulously crafted over 6 months. We tracked Aethelred's production schedules, their supply chain, and their marketing calendar. The target became clear: the Prestige de Genève, the world's most illustrious watch fair, where the biggest brands unveil their flagship models. Julian, we learned, was planning to launch a new, ultra-exclusive timepiece, the Aethelred Legacy, his coronation as the king of horology. It was the perfect stage for his downfall. The day of the fair was electric. The grand hall was a cathedral of wealth and craftsmanship. Giant banners bearing the Aethelred logo and Julian's smug face hung from the ceiling. He was the main event, scheduled for a 3 p.m. keynote address. Our attack was multi-pronged, a pincer movement of legal and public humiliation. At 2:45 p.m., as the grand hall filled with journalists, distributors, and wealthy clients, Ms. Albright's team initiated the legal strike. Synchronized emails and courier deliveries landed in the inboxes and offices of every single one of Aethelred's global distributors, retail partners, and investors. The message was simple and brutal: a formal cease and desist notification for patent infringement, citing my ownership of the Aethelred Escapement. It informed them that every watch they had ever sold was an illegal product, and that continuing to associate with the brand would expose them to significant legal liability. At 2:55 p.m., I walked into the convention center. I wasn't the broken down repairman anymore. I was wearing a bespoke suit, my posture straight, my eyes clear and focused. I didn't head for the main hall. Instead, I went to a smaller, adjacent conference room I had booked weeks in advance under a shell company name. I had sent personal, cryptic invitations to a curated list of the most influential horological journalists and bloggers, promising the true story behind the Aethelred Escapement. Curiosity is a powerful lure. The room was full. At 3 p.m., Julian took the stage to thunderous applause. The lights dimmed, and a dramatic video began detailing the history of the Aethelred brand, with Julian positioned as the singular visionary. As he began to speak, a strange murmur rippled through the audience. Phones were lighting up. The distributors in the front rows were looking at their devices with pale, horrified faces. Whispers turned to panicked murmuring. They had all just received Ms. Albright's email. Julian, blinded by the spotlights, faltered. "Ladies and gentlemen, a moment." At that exact moment, in my conference room, I stepped up to the podium. On the screen behind me, I didn't project a logo. I projected a high-resolution image of my grandfather's original hand-drawn patent filing from 1985. "My name is Elias Vance," I began, my voice steady and amplified by the small room's PA system. "And I am the son of Michael Vance, and the grandson of Arthur Aethelred Vance. Some of you may know me as the co-founder of Aethelred Horology. Today, however, I am here to reclaim my family's name and legacy." I told them everything: the story of my grandfather's invention, the founding of the company, the partnership, the betrayal. My voice was calm, filled not with anger, but with the cold, hard weight of truth. Then I delivered the killing blow. Mr. Croft built a successful brand, it's true, but he did so using a core technology he has never had the legal right to use without my consent. The Aethelred Escapement. I gestured to the screen, where I now displayed the legal bequest from my father. The patent for this mechanism, the very heart of every watch he has ever sold, is my personal property. It does not belong to Aethelred Horology. It does not belong to Julian Croft. It belongs to me. A journalist, already live streaming my presentation, gasped. The news was spreading through the convention center like wildfire. "Therefore," I announced, my voice resonating with finality, "as of this moment, I am formally and publicly revoking all implicit licenses to manufacture, market, or sell any device containing the Aethelred Escapement. The company Julian Croft represents is, effective immediately, a hollow shell, unable to legally produce the very product that defines it." Back in the main hall, the chaos had crescendoed. A prominent distributor stood up and shouted, "Is it true, Croft? Are we selling illegal goods?" Julian's face, projected onto the giant screens, was a mask of confusion and terror. His microphone picked up his panicked whisper to an aide. "What the hell is going on?" The keynote was over. His career was over. As journalists and investors stormed the stage to confront Julian, the press from my room spilled out, cameras flashing, questions flying. They found me standing calmly by my podium. I didn't gloat. I simply answered their questions with facts, presenting the undeniable documentation. The aftermath was brutal and swift. Julian's empire crumbled in a matter of days. His investors sued him for fraud and misrepresentation. His distributors canceled their contracts and sued for damages. The Aethelred brand became toxic overnight. Stripped of his ill-gotten gains by lawsuits and legal fees, Julian Croft, the celebrated visionary, was ruined, left with nothing but a tarnished name and the hollow echo of his own arrogance. I didn't reclaim the Aethelred name. It was tainted by Julian's greed. Instead, I returned to my workshop, the sanctuary he had thrown me out of. I hung a new simple wooden sign above the door, Vance Horology. Word of my return, of the true story, spread throughout the industry. The collectors and connoisseurs, the ones who truly appreciated the craft, they sought me out. They didn't want a brand built on lies. They wanted a timepiece built with integrity by the hands of the real owner. My business is smaller now, more personal, but it is entirely mine. The rhythmic tick-tock of the Vance Escapement once again fills my workshop. It is no longer a sound of partnership or betrayal. It is the sound of justice, of legacy reclaimed, of a quiet, patient, and perfectly executed revenge. It is the sound of my name.